time to talk about and grade the British soap operas over the past 2.5 weeks, the first 2.5 weeks of February. For anybody that didn't see my American soap opera video or the Oceania soap opera video, I will no longer be doing rankings. I'm going to be doing it in this format for the foreseeable future. Going to try and do it for each region every 2 weeks, but some months I'm going to probably be too busy and it's probably not going to happen every 2 weeks. It might be more than that, but we'll see how it goes. We're going to start with talking about Emmerdale because it is still the worst of the British soap operas. And there's not a whole lot to say about it, honestly. It's more of the same that I've been complaining about for a long time now with Emmerdale. The biggest issue on Emmerdale for years now, it is one boring soap opera. It's always the same thing, and the stories go around in circles. Chloe came back to town, who's having Mackenzie's baby. Mackenzie's still hiding it from Charity and others, only for her to leave town again, this time with Sarah. They're going to live with Debbie, but it still keeps Mackenzie's secret that she's having Mackenzie's baby. I don't care. I think the reason I'm not going to have a whole lot to talk about with Emmerdale is because I fast forward this show a lot to get through it, because there's nothing worth watching outside of, I guess, Mandy and Paddy kind of hooking up. Mandy's been kind of sad because of her son Vinny's grieving of losing Liv, and then Paddy's been going through a real depression of his own after Chaz's affair and their breakup. And so I think they found each other, drank together, and hooked up. And it made a lot of sense for both of them. But then Paddy kind of disappears and everybody's looking for him in kind of a panic, hoping he's okay. He is okay. But he's still kind of hiding from both Chaz and Mandy. But I think they are doing a pretty good job with the Paddy's depression storyline after all of this fallout with Chaz. So, out of all the stories on Emmerdale, most of them are bad, but I think that one, I guess, is the best one. We had Marcus and Ethan break up after a harassing storyline that I didn't care about at all. I like that Naomi's kind of becoming everyone's confidant after everybody was shunning her when she first came to town. I've always had a soft spot for the character of Naomi, so I hope she can stick around for a while and maybe get her own story, though, soon. And then, of course, the other big story is Caleb in town, and Caleb and Kane and their rivalry. They continue to try and mess with each other. Kane let a horse loose, and Caleb's the horse whisperer, and got the horse to calm down. And that about sums it up. Emmerdale is a real mess. There's not a lot of good stories. I still gave it a decent grade. I think it could be lower. I gave it a D grade. It's a failing grade still. But they did at least have one okay story with the whole Paddy depression and dealing with Paddy's depression. I felt like they actually put some time into writing those scripts at least. So I gave it a D. Could be worse, but the show remains so boring that I can't give it a better grade than that. The show is still a mess. And speaking of messes, Hollyoaks also still a mess for many different reasons, I guess. The problem with Hollyoaks has remained the same for a year now, over a year now. Since Lucy Allan took over, we've had so many problems, and I've talked about all of them. We had an influx of new characters, and they all sucked, and the reason none of them have worked, and a lot of them have already left the show, is because of the old soap opera rule that I've talked about before on the channel, where you introduce a new character, you can't shove them down the audience's throat right away, because we don't care. We don't care. But that's what they did with most of these new characters, and now most of them have already left the show because nobody cares about them. All their stories fell flat. Vicky, the latest one to get the axe with the teen scene, her and the teens go on this camping trip. There's drugs involved. Leah and Charlie are guilty of pushing these drugs onto Vicky. She faints, gets sick, ends up leaving town because her mom wants to actually have a new relationship with her, even though Scott's been taking care of Vicky. Whatever. The character of Vicky never got true development because Lucy Allan can't do her job, is basically what it is. Hollyoaks is just as bad as most of the American soap operas that I give all the American soap operas crap about with their writing. Hollyoaks has all of the same problems. The one thing Hollyoaks sometimes has over those American soap operas is they do so many stories on Hollyoaks that once in a while you get a good one, at least, and that doesn't always happen on the American soap operas. You get about 0 good stories most of the time. But the problem with Hollyoaks now is that their good story is over, and that was the whole incel story that I've talked about on this channel. Eric's in prison now, so they're still kind of keeping the character around, so I'm sure they'll go somewhere with it, but it's not going to be anywhere good. The best part of that story is over, and now we're left with these other stories that aren't very good. The Perry and Juliet relationship, with Perry meeting this guy named Perry, and since they have the same name, they go on a date. But Perry really just still has feelings for Juliet. Juliet still has feelings for Perry, and they're trying to work it out again. Of course, Juliet is still going through cancer treatment. But the problem with this is their breakup, they've had so many breakups over the past year, it feels like, that who cares anymore? It's just redundant. The Hollyoaks goes to the same bag so many times under Lucy Allan that you get to a point that everything on it isn't working. And I feel like we are at that point once again. There was some cute scenes, I guess, when James proposes to stay because of he thinks that he's embarrassed to be with him, so he proposes. But that couple, I'm not a big fan. James deserves a better relationship with a better character, and frankly, the character of James, I've talked about this many times too, just deserves better overall. Better writing for James, but we're not going to get it under Lucy Allan because everything under Lucy Allan kind of goes nowhere good. We see that with the Norma Warren story, where Warren wants revenge on Grace because Grace was trying to let him die, and suddenly Norma doesn't want Warren to try and kill Grace, even though Norma's built herself up as the big bad who's willing to do anything to keep her bad reputation to be the most dangerous person in Hollyoaks. Now, on one hand, you can say, yeah, Norma is stopping Warren from trying to kill Grace because he doesn't have a good enough alibi. He's going to be seen as guilty because he's making all these threats publicly, and that's true. But I feel like the story is going nowhere. The story with all the villains is just to have all the villains together threatening each other, but nobody's ever actually taking a real shot at them. It's a story that's now spinning its wheels. And then the whole Warren and Sienna relationship is so overdone now. They try and move Sienna on with Ethan, and I have learned to enjoy their chemistry, I guess. But Ethan is one of the characters they shoved down our throats when he first appeared that I don't like him. So all these problems in Hollyoaks just keep adding up, and we're not getting anywhere. I feel like every single character is just a caricature of their former selves under Lucy Allan, because her writing is so plot driven, but is so badly written that every character just looks like a caricature of their former selves. You see that the most with the McQueens, where Mercedes is like a caricature of her old self. She's never really grown. John Paul's alcoholism literally going in circles. It's going nowhere. They just play up the plot point because I guess they don't know what else to do with John Paul, so he just continues to fall off the wagon every few months. Hollyoaks is down bad. I think the one thing it has on Emmerdale is that it's not boring, at least, or not as boring as Emmerdale, so I gave it a D+. It's always been pretty on par with Days of Our Lives to me, with it's just a bunch of badly written storylines, basically, is what it comes down to. And the characters are suffering on both shows because of those poorly written stories. Coronation Street is next to talk about. It continues to find its footing again after hitting a bit of a rough patch, in my opinion. I feel like we have some good stories with Coronation Street right now, but there was a bad one as well. Anytime Coronation Street brings drugs or gangs into Coronation Street, it never really fits. It just comes off as Coronation Street trying to be EastEnders, and it's not EastEnders. So we had this other drug story with Jacob's dad, and I call him Jacob's dad because I have yet to care or want to learn his name because it's the worst story on the show, and I don't care about it. So that story was bad. But I do feel like we had two good stories that I'll get to here. I do want to touch upon Max, who is, he was being groomed to be the extreme racist, and he gets sentenced, and I think he's like in some sort of detention center because he is still young. The character of Max could use a rest, or we need to see some actual growth from Max or something. Because the way they've written Max as this one-note, annoying child character who always is making the wrong decisions, it's finally, it got old a long time ago, but now we're really at a point where it really is stale. So they need to take Max in a new direction, or just give the character a rest for several months. Although Coronation Street could give their younger set a rest for several months in general, because a lot of the stories aren't good anymore, anything with Summer. The best thing about Coronation Street over the past 2.5 weeks is that Summer, I don't know if Summer was on at all. She might have only been like 1 or 2 episodes or 0. And that was great to get a break from Summer. I'm so thankful for the break from the character of Summer. Let's get to the two good stories. They're doing a Stalker story, and I mentioned this with Home and Away because they're doing a Stalker story too. I feel like Coronation Street is a little more interesting and being done a little better, where Daisy's been having a stalker, and she finally comes face to face with the stalker, Justin, and he does a really good job of being a creep. I think that's why this story is better, is because he's playing creep well. But I also like the approach from Daniel, who is with Daisy, just trying to buy Justin a coffee, trying to be nice to him, to get him to back off gently. Now, we didn't really see this story over the past week or more, honestly, I feel like. But what we have gotten from it so far has been good TV. And then, of course, lastly to talk about is the character of Steven. I've talked about the dark humor that has been coming from this character. And that's still kind of what we're getting. We got to the point where Steven's been desperate for money. It's been the reason he's gone down this dark path that seems to be getting worse and worse for him, is his desperation for money and not wanting to be totally bankrupt. And he thought he was going to put in all this work and get a promotion working for Carla, only for Carla to give the job he thought he should get to Sarah. And so what is Steven going to do? At least not kill Carla yet. But he drugs Carla with LSD because he finds out she had a psychotic break before, and he's trying to make her think it's happening to her again. And it's very successful. She's going to step away from the business for a while and put Steven and Sarah in charge. But I still do like the route they continue to go with Steven, where he is a bumbling fool and a weirdo and very awkward, but has become such a dark character villain that I find very different from any other villain in a soap opera for a very long time. So I have to give props to Coronation Street for that. I graded Coronation Street a solid C, a passing grade. Only one of 4 of the 10 soap operas that get a passing grade from me for so far in February. Well, that's basically how my rankings used to go. I used to talk about how the top 3 or the top 4 are the only soap operas doing well. I still feel that way 2.5 weeks into February. EastEnders still remains top-notch as far as soap operas go. It continues to be a battle between EastEnders and Shortland Street as to what is the best soap opera right now. I did give EastEnders my highest grade out of all the 10 soap operas so far in February with a B, a really good B. It's not any higher because I do feel like EastEnders does have a couple of stinker stories. The biggest stinker story is Lily's pregnancy, and I talked about this on my EastEnders video for January, how everyone is kind of romancing this pregnancy of a 12-year-old girl without telling her how hard this is really going to be for her. Nobody wants to sit down with her and have a talk about how the pregnancy for a 12-year-old giving birth is going to be terrible. Raising a child at such a young age is unfathomable. Nobody's having these conversations with her, and it's not making any sense for me. And they brought back her biological dad, Ryan, and I thought maybe that could be a turning point in the story, but no, the story still sucks. It's not a good story. Thankfully, that's the only really bad story, and every other story, and there's a lot of them going on in EastEnders, and all of them, to me, are pretty good. I think the best one is the Denise and Ravi affair that I also talked about in January, and how I was kind of rooting for it, and I rarely, if ever, root for affairs in soap operas, but they managed to turn Jack into such an annoying character that when you look at the way Jack has been treating Denise, you do get an understanding as to how Denise can fall for Ravi. And it's not like she fell quick. She kept trying to push Ravi away, and he continued to pursue her until on Valentine's Day, when Denise overhears Jack and his ex Sam kind of laughing about Denise and how it was all Amy's idea for Jack to just buy flowers for Denise on Valentine's Day, and how Amy's idea was to come up with a date for Denise and Jack did none of this. Denise turns to Ravi, and finally they kiss and have sex. So that affair in full effect, unless it's just going to be a one-night stand, because Denise is feeling guilty, but I'm here for it because Jack just sucks. Jack just sucks in every single way. Sure, a lot of hard stuff falling on him, and you could argue that Jack is having an emotional affair with his ex Sam, because for months now Jack has been divulging all of the information from his relationship to Sam, his ex, and he's leaned on Sam in a lot of different occasions other than leaning on Denise. So the argument can easily be made that Jack started having an affair emotionally with Sam long before Denise has jumped into this physical affair with Ravi. So Jack sucks. I just need to point out, Ravi, one of the best additions to a soap opera, and certainly the best additions to EastEnders in a long time. Ravi is a character who you can put in any type of soap opera storyline. He could be the badass if you need him to be. He could clearly be the hot love interest for an affair if you need him to be. He could even be an anti-hero if you really need to push him in that direction. Because compared to Jack, Ravi's looking way better than old cop Jack right now. So I think Ravi, a great addition to the show, and a character with a lot of legs. And his family's still going through it on the whole Suki and Niche side of things, where Niche is trying to use Vinny for some stuff, and Vinny's also kind of choosing Niche over Suki. I think where this story is getting interesting is Niche is trying to make all these moves, including maybe even trying to get onto Phil's territory, which should bring some interesting stories down the line. And then on the other side of things, we still have Eve, who is in love with Suki, but Suki has to always hide the fact that she's into women from everyone because of her upbringing, because of her relationship with Niche. Eve, again, trying to tell Suki that she loves her, but they just can't be together right now. And Eve's trying to tell Suki everything she's doing, even with this connection with Niche she's tried to make, is because she still loves Suki. So we still have that possible future relationship, even though Suki does nothing but try and get it through Eve's head that they can't be together. That story is still working for me very well. They've also finally put some more dimensions into Sam. I feel like Sam's become a better mother over the past few months. Sam's been a good friend to Zach with his diagnosis of HIV. Zach still hasn't told Whitney, I don't think. And Whitney's finding out that she might have another miscarriage. There's a problem with the baby she's carrying. She doesn't realize that Zach might be responsible for that with his HIV diagnosis. And then, of course, we still have Lola, who continues to have her story of dying from cancer. Her mother came to town looking to basically start a relationship with her daughter. So that was a nice touch that Lola can finally connect with her mother, as she doesn't have a lot of time left. EastEnders, enough good storylines going on for me to still think it is the best soap opera, or at least the best English speaking soap opera of the bunch. I gave it a B. I hope we can do better with the Lily storyline, because it is a story that could certainly drag this show down, because I think it really does suck. But there's a lot of good still going on, and a lot of characters that are dynamic, like Ravi, that just makes it hard for me to not grade EastEnders the highest of the soaps right now.